Hey guys, we're going to be working with watercolors today and learning all kinds of watercolor techniques. Why is that important? Knowing your tools, and in this case watercolor being a tool, knowing what your tools can do can make you a better art communicator. So if you have an idea you want to communicate, knowing what your tools can do can help you communicate your ideas better. So here I'm going to go ahead and paint this part of my paper wet and leave this part of my paper dry. I'm actually going to write that in here. Wet, dry. I want you to notice what happens when I paint over here versus over here. I'm going to grab some paint and I put my paper, my brush down, and then now I'm going to paint on the dry part. What happened? Over here, the paint spread, and over here, the paint stayed put. So there are no right or wrong ways of painting, but knowing what your paint can do and what happens helps you communicate better. So for example, let's say you want to make a flower with wild petals. You might be able to use this technique, and if you want something more controlled, you're going to use this technique. I have here a white crayon. I'm going to be using a white crayon to draw a winter scene. And what a white crayon has is wax. And wax has some oils in it that act as a wall. And what it does is it keeps the water from touching the paper. So any place on your paper that you don't want to grab the paint color, you are going to color in white. Now I'm making a secret painting which will be revealed in just a second. So there we go. I want you to take a guess as to what I'm doing, and I'm almost there, and you're going to be very surprised. So here I'm going to grab some paint and I'm painting over. So there, that's something else your oil pastel can do. It can help you make a winter scene. Now I'm going to show you how to use your brush as a stamp. I'm going to dip my brush, and then I'm going to rotate my paper around to create petals. I can switch my color, and now I'm going to make a different color flower. This time it's going to be red. You can even make a different kind of flower. And now all we need are the stems. Now here's something you can do with your brush. I'm going to put lots of pressure on my brush. And then I'm going to use the same brush to put little pressure, or not too much pressure. And let's see what happens. I'm going to use a purple to put a lot of pressure on that brush. Notice how thick that line is. This is helpful to know if you are going to be painting any kind of tree trunks in the future, or you want to cover your paper kind of quickly. use lots of pressure. Now I'm going to use the same brush to make thin lines using little pressure. Look, this was the same exact brush, but the line width is different. Now I made here the beginnings of a landscape, and I would like to paint a tree on top of it. I waited and waited and waited for my landscape to dry. Now that I touch it, it is dry and it's ready. The reason it needs to be dry is because if I put a new color on top and it's wet, it is going to bleed all over my paper. I'm going to use lots of pressure to make my trunk and less pressure to make the branches and the twigs on my tree. So there. This would not have happened had I not waited. So time is very important when using watercolor. Sometimes I'll have two paintings at the same time. I'll let this dry because I would like to add some blossoms, but if right now I added some blossoms, it would mix with the black. So I'm going to grab another painting that is dry. This is another one I made, and now this is ready for me to add some flowers to. And I'm going to sprinkle my flowers, and in this case, some of those blossoms are pinkish, and so I do want the red and the white that I'm gonna add in there to mix on the paper and create this feeling of cherry blossom petals there. So I do want the colors. I'm gonna zoom in so you can see what I'm talking about. You see, I do want that effect. Now here is where you have to know when to stop, because if you keep going, you are gonna wake up the colors that are sleeping underneath the black, which is the rainbow colors, which we do not want. So you have to remember that if you add way too much water, it is going to wake up the dormant colors or the sleeping colors that are underneath. Okay, now last but not least, we're gonna talk about intensity. So here I've added one layer of green for the grass. For watercolors, because it's so translucent, when you add layers, you make it much more opaque. Opaque is just a word for making it more solid. So if you want your colors to be more solid and less translucent, you need to layer them, but not while they're wet. You gotta wait, come back to it, and add that layer on. There you go. I hope you had fun today. These were just a couple of techniques that will help you get started with exploring watercolors. There are many, many, many more techniques out there, and I'm encouraging you to go online and search them out. This was meant to be a very basic video just to get you started and not to scare you away. But as I said, there's many techniques out there that have, if you just go online and look at watercolor techniques, there's going to be about 24 charts that pop up, and I want you to explore those as well. But I think what I gave you today is a good beginning. Let's get going. And remember, you can paint anything you want. And remember also that you learn as you go, and the mistakes you make are actually great and helpful, and they help you learn, and they help you remember what not to do and what works, and what little secrets there are in this media. So I hope you have fun, and I would love for you to share what you make with me as always. So have fun.